Have you ever felt a war brewing within you? Not just in your mind, but deep in your very being. Imagine feeling a literal battle raging inside your own mother. That is where our story begins. Rebecca, pregnant with twins, felt an unprecedented struggle, a violent stirring that made her seek a direct answer from God Himself, and what He revealed was as astounding as it was unsettling. "Two nations are in your womb," the Lord declared. "Two peoples will be separated from your body. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." Think about that for a moment. Before they even had names, before they drew a single breath, these two lives were prophesied as a generational conflict. Not just brothers, but entire nations, locked in a divine decree that flipped the natural order on its head. Then came the birth. First, Esau. He burst into the world covered in a cloak of reddish hair, fiery and wild, a primal force. His name, Esau, means hairy or rough, a perfect descriptor for the life he was destined to live. Intense, unbridled. But hot on his heels came Jacob, grasping his brother's heel, as if desperate to overtake him even in the womb. A foreshadowing, a primal struggle for dominance that would define their lives, and the lives of their descendants, for centuries. This wasn't just a sibling rivalry. This was a cosmic clash written into their very DNA. Esau, the firstborn, the natural heir to the Abrahamic blessing, the covenant that stretched through Isaac. Yet, God's plan bypassed human custom. The older would serve the younger. It was decided before light ever touched their eyes. Every fiber of Esau seemed loud, intense, marked for significance. His name, his appearance, his birth order, everything screamed, "I am here, I am important." He was no background character. He was a man destined to carry the weight of decisions that would ripple through eternity. The stage was set, the battlefield was drawn. Esau and Jacob, two brothers, two peoples, two radically different destinies, and neither, believe me, would emerge from this journey unscathed. So, I ask you, do you believe some lives are truly marked from the start, or do our choices, moment by moment, forge our true destiny? This story challenges us to confront that very question. Someone whose strength is also their greatest vulnerability. That was Esau. From a young age, he was magnetic, impossible to ignore. His body covered in hair, his skin reddish, he embodied a raw, untamed essence, while his brother Jacob was calm, reflective, a man of the tents. Esau was wild, impulsive, driven by the winds of adventure. He was a spirit made for the open fields, for the thrill of the chase. As he grew, this nature only deepened. Esau became a master hunter. He could scent prey before he saw it. His steps were silent, his eyes razor sharp, his hands steady on the bow. He moved through the wilderness as if he were born for it. Where others saw just an animal, Esau saw a challenge, a conquest. And the harder the challenge, the more alive he felt. This unquenchable thirst for adrenaline, for proving himself, made him admired, feared, and even, yes, envied. But his intensity wasn't confined to the hunt. Esau's personality mirrored his life in the wild. He was direct, unfiltered, and rarely measured the consequences of his actions. He lived for the now, as if tomorrow wasn't his problem. This brazen honesty, this raw power won him the deep affection of his father, Isaac. Isaac saw in Esau the ideal son, strong, decisive, a provider, everything a patriarch hoped for. And Esau knew how to prepare a meal from the hunt that melted Isaac's heart. This created an unspoken, powerful bond. Meanwhile, Rebekah, their mother, gravitated towards Jacob, seeing the quiet strategist in him. It was an impossible contrast, one, pure impulse, the other, calculated strategy. One, a roaring fire, the other, a gentle breeze. One ran to the forest, the other to the quiet safety of the tents. This imbalance of parental affection, this subtle favoritism, stoked the simmering tension between the brothers. Esau grew up without filters. He spoke his mind, did what he wanted, and trusted implicitly in his own formidable strength. This gave him charisma, yes, but it also made him incredibly vulnerable. He disliked thinking too much, waiting too long. His youth was defined by this haste, a characteristic that, as we'll see, would eventually demand an unbearably high price. Deep down, Esau mirrors many of us, strong in will, but sometimes weak in discernment, a born warrior, yet lacking the wisdom to understand that not every battle is won with brute force. Some require patience, others, foresight. And that, my friend, was the crucial piece still missing from the puzzle of Esau's life. What hastiness is defining your choices today? This isn't a verse you'd frame and hang on your wall. This isn't a story for a Sunday school flannel graph. This part of Esau's life will split your soul in two, forcing you to ask a terrifying question. What am I willing to trade for a moment of relief? The sun beat down mercilessly. Sweat streamed from Esau's brow. His steps were heavy, each one dragging. He was returning from a hunt, utterly exhausted, his breath ragged, his muscles screaming for rest. It had been a fruitless day. The bitter scent of failure clung to him, thicker than the dust of the road. But what truly broke him wasn't the empty game bag. It was the irresistible aroma wafting from Jacob's tents. Jacob, meticulous as always, was preparing a rich red stew of lentils. The smell was intoxicating, especially to a man who had spent the entire day fasting, exposed to the elements and pushed to the brink of collapse. Esau stumbled in, saw the bubbling pot, and blurted out, raw with hunger, "Quick, give me some of that red stew. Please, I am absolutely exhausted." But Jacob, ever the strategist, ever alert for opportunity, didn't give anything away for free. His brother was hungry, vulnerable, desperate. This was his chance. "Sell me your birthright first," Jacob replied, as if asking for a casual favor. Did Esau even think? Did he pause? Number, the same impulse that guided him in the hunt, that drove him to immediate satisfaction, now spoke louder than any sense of responsibility, any understanding of future consequence. "Look," he declared, "I am about to die. What good is a birthright to me then?" And there, in front of a simple dish, he traded his destiny. The birthright wasn't just a title. It was the right to lead the family. It was the sacred privilege of receiving the blessing of God's covenant, passed down from Abraham through Isaac. It was the channel of the promise itself. Selling that for a single meal, it was like bartering a king's ransom for a handful of dirt. But for Esau, in that agonizing moment, immediate hunger outweighed the boundless future. Jacob, ever shrewd, made sure the deal was sworn, legally binding. Esau swore. He ate. He drank. He got up, and he walked away. The biblical text delivers the chilling verdict with a phrase that lands like a lead weight. Thus, Esau despised his birthright. He didn't just lose it. He despised fronted. He traded the eternal for the immediate, the invisible promise for the visible dish. It was a choice made in mere seconds, but it would reverberate for centuries. That red dish became a potent symbol of an unthinking decision, of an impulse that rewrote destinies. That day was not just another day. It was the day Esau became the man who renounced the promise. So, what red stew are you being tempted by right now? Are you valuing the fleeting over the eternal? What precious, irreplaceable part of your destiny are you risking for momentary relief? Think about it, because sometimes the greatest betrayals are those we commit against our own future. Imagine waking up one day and realizing the most crucial blessing of your life, the one destined for Sadat, was stolen, not by force, but by deception. Isaac's house had become a silent battlefield. No swords, no shields. Just glances that spoke volumes. The rivalry between Esau and Jacob wasn't mere brotherly squabble. It was a conflict of predestined paths. One lived for the present with untamed intensity. The other dreamed of shaping the future with calculated cunning. One trusted raw strength. The other gambled on strategic deceit. After the sale of the birthright, the tension between them only tightened. Jacob knew something vital was still missing, their father's blessing. The title of firstborn was meaningless without Isaac's paternal affirmation. And old Isaac, blind and weakened, still held a fierce preference for Esau. It was with Esau that he dreamed of sharing his legacy, in him that he saw the future of his lineage. And that is where the riskiest, most heartbreaking game of all began. One day, Isaac called Esau. He asked him to go hunting, prepare a savory meal, and then receive the coveted birthright blessing. The moment that would change everything was imminent. But Rebekah, listening in, acted with lightning speed. She knew God's prophecy. The older will serve the younger. For her, Jacob was the chosen one. And if deception was necessary to fulfill God's promise, she would do it. Jacob hesitated, fear warring with ambition, but ultimately he gave in. He donned Esau's clothes, draped his arms and neck with goatskins to mimic his brother's hairy limbs, and entered his father's presence, like an actor stepping onto a stage. Isaac found the voice strange, but he relied on touch, the familiar scent of Esau's clothes, and the taste of the food. In the end, he pronounced the blessing upon Jacob, believing he was Esau. Words filled with power. Be Lord over your brothers, may peoples serve you. May those who bless you be blessed. The promise, flowing from Abraham, through Isaac, now rested on Jacob, not by birthright, but by a meticulously orchestrated scheme. When Esau returned from the hunt, a smile on his face, the aroma of his own prepared meal filling the air, he found a devastating scene. His father, trembling, had already poured out the blessing, his blessing, onto another son. And when Esau heard the truth, a scream tore through the air. It wasn't just pain, it was the raw, primal shriek of despair. It was the soul of a man realizing, too late, what he had truly lost. Father, bless me, too. He pleaded, tears streaming, his voice choked with agony. But the main blessing, the one determining leadership, prosperity, and the continuity of the covenant had been given, and it could not be recalled. From that moment, brotherly love curdled into bitter hate. Esau wasn't just angry, he swore vengeance. I will kill my brother Jacob. The family rivalry now carried a deadly tone. What began with a bowl of lentils spiraled into a vortex of lies, grievances, and threats. Isaac's house, once a haven of promise, now breathed fear, tension, and irreconcilable division. What unfulfilled promise? What stolen opportunity still haunts you? How do you respond when life deals you an unfair hand? Do you choose bitterness, or is there a path to healing for your soul? What do you do when the path you thought was yours is suddenly gone? When the promise, the very thing you were born for, passes you by? Jacob had fled. Rebekah, his mother, had sent him away in haste to Laban's house, her brother. The reason was stark. Esau wanted revenge. And if the two remained under the same roof, blood would undoubtedly speak louder than any family tie. The separation was inevitable, and it was agonizing. Esau remained, but what was left for him was a silent, empty house and a heart in ruins. The blessing he had hoped to receive was gone. His brother had vanished like a thief in the night, and his parents were now torn between deep regret and gnawing fear. The atmosphere that once breathed family life was now shrouded in resentment. Nothing, truly nothing, would ever be the same again. With Jacob gone, Esau began to look at himself, to grasp the profound change around him. He was still the eldest son, but now he was the man who had lost everything: the birthright, the blessing, the primary place in the covenant. It had all slipped through his fingers, and deep down, even amidst his burning anger at Jacob, Esau carried an even deeper, more insidious wound. He felt despised by his own mother. Rebekah had conspired against him, openly choosing the other son. This pain, invisible to others, burned silently within him. In a desperate, ill-conceived attempt to regain some semblance of approval, or perhaps simply to assert his independence, Esau made a drastic choice. He married women from the local Canaanite tribes, and later, a woman descended from Ishmael, Isaac's exiled brother. It was almost as if he was declaring, "If you don't accept me, if I am not part of your sacred plan, then I will forge my own way." But these marriages were not well received by his parents. They were unions outside the covenant, a clear rejection of the path God had established with Abraham and his descendants. Again, Esau tried to make a mark, to find belonging, and again, he missed the true mark. Jacob's separation was not merely physical. It was the breaking of two paths that would diverge completely. Jacob would embark on a journey of profound transformation, wrestling with God himself. Esau, on the other hand, would begin to build a people of his own, away from the specific promise, but with its own strength and identity. The wound between the two brothers continued to bleed, and distance seemed the only way to prevent the conflict from escalating into outright tragedy. Jacob's flight and Esau's permanence were not just circumstances. They were the direct results of choices, mistakes, and raw emotions that exploded within a family marked by preferences, deceptions, and broken promises. So the two brothers followed opposite paths, one towards the blessing, the other through the crucible of pain. But their story, believe me, was far from over. Can purpose be found outside the main plan you envisioned? How do we build meaningful lives, even when we feel overlooked or profoundly wronged? Some wounds run so deep, you think they'll never truly heal. Some hatreds are so fierce, you imagine only blood can quench them. But what if there is a different way? What if, against all odds, forgiveness finds a way to blossom in the most arid soil of resentment? Decades had passed since Jacob's desperate flight. Each brother had walked his own path, one into exile and spiritual transformation, the other into a new territory and the monumental task of nation building. But some stories, you see, do not end with distance alone. There are wounds that time cannot heal by itself. In this case, there was only one thing capable of truly closing the chapter opened so many years before. A reunion. Jacob was finally returning. God himself had commanded his return to the land of his fathers. But with that divine order came an old, chilling fear facing Esau, the very brother who had sworn to kill him all those years ago. And now Jacob was not alone. He was coming with wives, children, servants, and vast possessions. The responsibility was immense, the fear even greater. When he heard that Esau was coming to meet him, not alone, but with 400 men, Jacob's heart seized. That wasn't a reception committee. That was an army. That sounded like war. Desperate, Jacob divided his caravan, prepared lavish gifts, to try and appease his brother, and spent an agonizing night, wrestling not just with a man, but with God himself, receiving a new name, Israel, he who struggles with God. But the most daunting fight was yet to come. Then, the next day, as the two brothers cautiously approached each other, the utterly unexpected happened. Esau did not come with a sword. He did not come with hatred in his eyes. He ran towards Jacob like a father runs to a long-lost son, and upon reaching him, Esau embraced him fiercely. He fell on Jacob's neck, and he wept. Decades of time, years of pain, the burning embers of anger everything flowed out in a torrent of tears. Two brothers, marked by rivalry, now met as two transformed men. Jacob, in humility, bowed 7 times before his brother. And Esau, his heart miraculously healed, refused the elaborate gifts Jacob offered. "I have plenty, my brother," he said, his voice raw with emotion. But at Jacob's insistence, he finally accepted. It was as if that symbolic exchange, that moment of giving and receiving, sealed a peace that the past had relentlessly denied. Esau demanded no explanations. He asked for no returns, no restitution. He didn't even speak of the stolen blessing. He simply forgave. He showed that time away from home had not only forged him into the head of a people, but also into a man of profound maturity. The Esau who appears in this reunion is no longer the impulsive hunter, nor the furious, vengeful brother. He is a man capable of truly leaving the past behind, of choosing peace where there was every justification for war. They followed distinct paths after that powerful embrace. But right there, in that brief, sacred moment between tears and smiles, two worlds born in conflict found reconciliation. What seemed utterly impossible happened. Esau forgave Jacob. The heart that once planned revenge chose, instead, love. And that, my friend, changed everything. Is there someone in your life you need to forgive, even if they haven't asked? Can you choose peace over old grievances, even when you were the wronged party? Esau's story isn't just an ancient tale. It is a stark, powerful mirror reflecting so-taught choices, so-taught values, and ultimately, destinies. After that profound reunion with Jacob, Esau returned to Seir, the mountainous land he had chosen as his home, where he had already begun to set down deep roots. There, away from the direct lineage of the Abrahamic promise, he built something equally grand in its own right, a formidable people. Esau's offspring didn't just grow. They consolidated into a powerful nation with a distinct identity, military strength, and significant regional influence. This people was called Edom, and its very name carries the indelible mark of its founder. Edom directly refers to that pivotal, impulsive episode of the Red Stew sought, that desperate moment when Esau traded his invaluable birthright for a mere dish of lentils. The color red became a symbol of his history, an eternal reminder of how one impetuous choice shaped the destiny of generations to come. But Edom also stands as powerful proof that even outside of God's primary covenant plan with Israel, Esau played a remarkably relevant role in shaping the geopolitical landscape of the ancient world. Esau took multiple wives, including Canaanite and Ishmaelite women, forging alliances that clearly demonstrated his fierce independence from the customs and expectations of Isaac's house. His sons became chiefs of clans, tribal leaders in their own right. Esau's descendants spread throughout the rugged mountainous region, built cities, and established complex governmental structures. Unlike Jacob, who endured a long, arduous journey of transformation to become Israel, Esau built his people with remarkable speed and stability. Genesis chapter 36 is dedicated entirely to the extensive genealogy of Esau. This is no small detail. It is a clear, divine recognition of his profound historical importance. Names like Eliphaz, Reuel, and Teman echo through the lineage of a people who, even as frequent rivals of Israel, possessed immense strength and territory. The Edomites would be mentioned countless times throughout the scriptures, sometimes as fierce enemies, sometimes as tense neighbors, but always present, always a force in the history of God's people. Edom was a warlike, firm, and proud nation. Their relationship with Israel would forever be marked by conflicts, territorial disputes, and ancient resentments. Yet it all began with one man who refused to remain in his brother's shadow. Esau may have lost the blessing, but he never, ever gave up on leaving a legacy. He erected a nation with his own hands, carrying in each step the weight of what he was and the unyielding strength of what he decided to be. Esau's story doesn't end with his death, nor is it limited to his conflicts with Jacob. It lives on, etched in the pages of Scripture, as a profound mirror of our own decisions. Because Esau, deep down, represents something far greater than simply a man who lost his blessing. He symbolizes the universal human being standing at the crossroads of choices that define their destiny. Esau was born with everything to lead. He was the firstborn, physically strong, deeply admired by his father, the natural heir to the promise, but it took only a single moment of weakness, an unthinking choice for everything to change. His mistake wasn't merely trading his birthright for a dish. It was to despise what was eternal in exchange for something fleeting, and that reveals a powerful, terrifying lesson. True loss does not always begin with absence, but with devaluation. At the same time, Esau was not a man abandoned by God. He prospered. He created a people. He had children, lands, and power. His life profoundly proves that even those who make serious life-altering mistakes can rise again, build something lasting, and leave an indelible mark. He was not cursed. He was, in a profound sense, redirected, and that teaches us a vital truth. There is dignity, purpose, and even divine handiwork, even outside the main stage of the grand promise. God's plan, you see, is always greater than we can fully comprehend. And even those who walk the edges of history are used to fulfill it. The reunion with Jacob also leaves a trail of deep, transformative learning. Esau showed us that it is profoundly possible to forgive. He possessed overwhelming military power, every motive for revenge, and a clear opportunity to exact it. But he chose, instead, to embrace. He demanded no explanations, no restitution, no revenge. He simply, beautifully, left the past behind. In times when pride and resentment so often dominate our lives, Esau shines as a towering example of someone who chose peace, even when he was undeniably the offended party. But perhaps Esau's greatest legacy, his most urgent message, is the warning his life represents. How many times, like him, do we make decisions driven by haste, by immediate hunger, by the intense emotion of the now? How many times do we trade truly precious, irreplaceable things for momentary relief, for fleeting comfort? Esau calls us, directly, to profound introspection. What have we truly valued? What are we, in this very moment, willing to trade for a dishes that seems irresistible right now? His story is raw, human, full of flaws and incredible new beginnings. And that, my friend, makes it even closer, even more relatable, to each of us. Esau reminds us that destiny is not just what we receive. It is, above all, what we choose to do with what we have in our hands. He was not the bearer of the primary promise, but he was a man who, with all his marks, all his struggles, built a story that echoes powerfully to this very day. If this story is stirring something in your spirit, if it's sparking new questions, then consider joining this community. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments, what choice are you facing today? May God bless you and guide your steps.